Hello and welcome to Auspol Explained. I'm David, your long curly haired host. Normally I explain things to do with Australia's political system, like, how Parliament works, but that can be pretty dry sometimes. We all need a bit of a break for something a little bit more light-hearted, so I figured I'd do something fun, like rank the graves of former Prime Ministers based off how interesting the quotes on their graves are. Light-hearted. Look, we've just had an election, let's just chill out for a bit. If you're tuning in to this episode, congratulations, you're not dead, which gives you an advantage over most former Prime Ministers because they are. A lot have graves you can visit, pay tribute to, or if you're like me, rank them online in a listicle literally no one asked for. To be clear, this was not requested by anyone. No one wanted this, I just sort of needed to make it. As of recording, 23 out of 31 Prime Ministers have died, which is pretty good, but unfortunately most of them don't have anything interesting written on their graves, which automatically excludes them from this list, thankfully making it a lot shorter. Their graves are usually just bog standard name and date stuff, the usual. Some don't even have graves, like Page, McMahon, or even Whitlam, who were cremated. There aren't even enough graves with quotes to do a top 10, but that won't stop me. I'm gonna do this anyway. So without further ado, here is my list. Number 8. Stanley Bruce, Prime Minister from 1922 to 1929. He was the 8th Prime Minister of Australia. He died in 1967 at age 84, and his ashes were scattered at Lake Burley Griffin in Canberra, where there is a commemorative plaque. So close enough to a grave. It doesn't actually have a simple quote, it's actually a biography that's pretty lengthy as far as graves go. I don't think it's particularly engaging in terms of its text, and I considered cutting it, but it has a fun history fact in it, and I'm a sucker for fun history, so I'll summarize the basics of it here, and I promise the rest of this list is going to be way more interesting. Please continue paying attention to this list of Prime Minister's graves. Basically, the plaque says that he was born in Melbourne in 1883, the youngest of 5 children. He served in World War I before getting into politics, where he promoted economic development and overseas investment but didn't get along with unions. Fun fact, Canberra was a planned city. It didn't start being built until 1913. It was created as a compromise between the rival cities of Sydney and Melbourne, so neither would be the nation's capital because they didn't think about the other obvious solution, putting it in Perth. This meant for a couple of decades there was no national capital and nowhere for the federal parliament to sit in, so they had to temporarily use Victoria's Parliament House. And Victoria's Parliament had to go down the road to the exhibition centre. So the development of Canberra had already been going for quite some time before Bruce became Prime Minister, but he put more money in to speed up its completion and got to be Prime Minister when Old Parliament House in Canberra was opened in 1927. Then he lost his seat in 1929, becoming the first of only 2 Prime Ministers in Australian history to lose their seat at an election. Then afterwards he became an international diplomat. He was High Commissioner in London, represented Australia in the League of Nations, and worked with the United Nations to tackle world hunger. For a decade, starting in 1951, he was the first Chancellor of the Australian National University. He died in London, but wanted his ashes spread in Canberra. Then that's basically the gist of it. The biography itself isn't particularly very thrilling in its prose, but there is some interesting historical stuff in there that you don't get in other, graves in general, so I think it's worthwhile including, even though it is basically the least interesting on the list. Number 7. Arthur Fadden, who was Prime Minister from August 1941 to October 1941. He died in 1973, aged 79, and has a plaque in Mount Thompson Memorial Gardens and Crematorium in Brisbane. It's, again, basic biographical stuff, though it's bookended with 2 comments about him as a person that I think are kinda nice. It says he was a distinguished and warm-hearted Australian who became the 13th Prime Minister of Australia in 1941, followed by biographical details about his time in state and federal politics and how he was Deputy Prime Minister and Treasurer twice. Then, near the end of it, it says, Sir Arthur's renowned sense of humour, ready wit and deep humanity endeared him to many. I think that's actually pretty nice and much more personal than Bruce's grave. Like, no shade, but like, if there's a memorial about you, it should at least give me a vibe of who you were as a person. Also, entirely unrelated note, I have so many political biographies behind me, one of which, naturally, is the autobiography of Arthur Fadden. It's called They Called Me Artie, and the best thing about it is that it is actually autographed. It has Sir Arthur Fadden's autograph. He signed it. Not to me, personally, because he signed it in 1970, and I was no alive back then, but I have an autographed book by a Prime Minister. Nice. So anyway, next person who's dead. Number 6, Bob Hawke, Prime Minister from 1983 to 1991. Hawke was the 23rd Prime Minister. He died in 2019 at age 89, the most recent on this list. His grave is in Macquarie Park in New South Wales. While Hawke is the longest-serving Labor Prime Minister in Australian history, his grave has got a short and simple quote, which is really lovely. It reads, "Bob loved Australians and they loved him back." Aw, it's sweet. It's straight to the point and conveys the kind of important sentiments you want on a grave. He cared about people and they liked him, and that's what matters. Whether you're a politician or a regular person, you know, we all should just get along with each other. Number 5, John Curtin, the Prime Minister from 1941 until 1945. He was the 14th Prime Minister, and his time in office was consumed by the ravages of World War II. Tragically, he died in office at age 60, just weeks before the end of the war. His grave, located in Karrakatta Cemetery in Perth, Western Australia, is one of those really tall, pointy ones, which is quite old-fashioned, but to be fair, he did die 80 years ago, so I guess that's to be expected. They were like, this is really contemporary, very modern at the time, I suppose. You know the ones, like the really big, tall, pointy. Anyway, the quote on his grave really sums up his politics. His country was his pride, his brother man his cause. It's moving and concise. He cared about Australia and the plight of those within it. Good stuff. It also reads like the first draft of a politics-themed parody of the Pokemon theme song, which I won't sing for you now because I am so tone deaf. He will rally across the land, reforming far and wide. We can workshop it. Someone please write the rest in the comment section. Let's get it going. Australian politics-themed Pokemon theme parody. Let's go. Moving on to number 4, Billy Hughes, Prime Minister from 1915 to 1923. Hughes served as the 7th Prime Minister. He died in 1952, aged 90. Although, fun fact, his contemporaries didn't actually know how old he was. Just a month before he died, members of Parliament across all political parties celebrated what they thought was his 88th birthday. Hughes deciding not to correct anyone there is actually very funny to me, and is the kind of harmless messing with people that you're entitled to do when you get old. Hughes is buried in the same cemetery as Bob Hawke, which makes it a lot more convenient if you are a grave robber. Don't do that. He shares a grave with his daughter Helen, as well as his second wife Mary. Hughes had 7 children, but Helen was especially his favourite, who he referred to as the joy and light of my life. Sadly, Helen died 15 years before her father did, at age 21, so was the first person buried in that plot. The quote on the grave is a poem in tribute to her. It reads, "Sleep on, my love, in thy cold bed, never to be disquieted. Thou wilt not wake till I thy fate shall overtake, till age or grief or sickness must marry my body to that dust it so much loves. And slow, however my marches be, I shall at last sit down by thee." It's a really beautiful reminder of Hughes' love for his daughter. It's tragic to lose a loved one, and it really speaks to the longing to be reunited with them. I think it's genuinely really moving, tender, and shows a far more vulnerable and human side to the normally pugnacious and irascible Hughes, who made a lot of enemies during his prolific time in politics. I love it. I really do. Number 3, Ben Chifley. He was the 16th Prime Minister, serving from 1945 to 1949. He died in 1951, aged 65. He's buried at Bathurst Cemetery in New South Wales. Chifley's background is a very modest one. He was a train driver who got into politics through the union movement. One time he was invited to dine with King George VI, then turned it down because he didn't own a dinner suit and refused to buy one. His idea of a good meal was being alone in his office eating a bit of toast with a cup of tea and nothing else. He loved routine, trains, and dressing a certain way. Autistic icon, perhaps? Who knows? Anyway, his burial monument is a little less modest because it's a 12-foot high monolith with a 3 grey marble tiered structure. The centre tier has a quote from his last public speech, which is, "If an idea is worth fighting for, no matter the penalty, fight for the right, and truth and justice will prevail." Oh, doesn't that just rile you up? Doesn't that get you pumped? That's such a good quote. What greater goal is there in life and public office than truth and justice? Chifley is better known for his iconic "The Light on the Hill" speech. It's a tribute to the labour movement, and so named because of one line that goes, "We have a great objective, the light on the hill, which we aim to reach by working the betterment of mankind, not only here but anywhere we may give a helping hand." Good stuff. Old-timey speeches, they know how to like move something in you, you know? I think there's just a good art to it that we don't do nearly as often anymore. I think the quote on his grave, much like the Light on the Hill speech, is iconic and inspiring. It gives such a clear goal for us as individuals and the community to aspire to, which is to help one another. It is easily one of my favourite graves of an Australian Prime Minister because, again, that's what I'm ranking here. By pure personal decision, again, no one requested this. But let's move on. Number 2, James Scullin, the Prime Minister from 1929 until 1932. Scullin was the 9th Prime Minister. He died in 1953, aged 76, and is buried in Melbourne General Cemetery. While he spent decades in Parliament, his time as Prime Minister was tragically timed as it coincided with the onset of the Great Depression, which, despite his best efforts, he could not save Australia from, and absolutely devastated his political career. His grave has a tall grey Celtic cross atop it, reaching 12 feet high, which I guess is just how big old graves are. Anyway, below the cross is a quote from Scullin himself. It reads, "Justice and humanity demand interference whenever the weak are being crushed by the strong." Oh, it's so good. Just take that in for a moment. Justice and humanity demand interference whenever the weak are being crushed by the strong. Those, genuinely, words to live by. I don't have tattoos, but if I did, I'd consider this quote being, somewhere on my body. Comment down below where you think I should put it. Compared to like other quotes, Chifley talks about fighting for what's right and for justice, but Scullin perfectly defines what that is. If we have power, it is our duty to help our fellow human beings. If others have power, it is our duty to make them use it responsibly. It is not just a passive idea, but an active requirement to seek out inequality and prevent the strong from harming those in need, not just through words, but action. Interference. If someone seeks to cause injustice, then we must stand in their way. If we don't do it, who will? We must rally together to lift up the weak, to stamp out cruelty, and we must never settle for anything short of justice. To do anything less is to betray our very humanity, because what kind of world do we want to live in if humanity is meaningless? What is the point of anything if we stand by and let the strong crush the weak? It's not just saying it's our duty to put an end to injustice, but it is a hopeful message that we can stop injustice. It's both necessary and possible. That's what politics should be about. I'm being deadly serious right now. I'm trying not to soapbox at you, but think about it. This is perfect. This is literally a perfect quote. It's not just a summary of a person's life and values, but a universally useful guiding principle for us to live by. And to be honest, this episode is mostly just to tell you about how much I love this quote, so I'll tell you it again. Justice and humanity demand interference whenever the weak are being crushed by the strong. It's so good. I love it. I love it more than any other quote on a Prime Minister's grave. Except, of course, one. Number 1, Harold Holt, the Prime Minister from 1966 to 1967. We all know about Harold Holt, the 17th Prime Minister of Australia and the successor to Menzies, who was passionate about two things: swimming and cheating on his wife. During the 1967 Christmas break, he decided to do both when he went to his holiday home in Portsea, Victoria. Holt really wanted to go swimming, So he took his mistress, Marjorie Gillespie, her daughter and a couple of their friends to the nearby Cheviot Beach. Cheviot Beach, by the way, is named after the SS Cheviot, a steamship that sunk there in 1887 and 35 of its crew tragically drowned. So, not a good start. Despite the terrible weather, Holt's permanent shoulder injury, the fact that Cheviot Beach is not a public beach due to dangerous rips, and warnings from his aforementioned mistress about how choppy the water looked, Holt reassured his guests, saying, "I know this beach like the back of my own hand." To be fair, he was familiar with the beach. He'd been there many times before, including earlier that year in May when he went swimming and nearly drowned. Who could possibly have predicted what happened next? Who? He went in, the water took him, he was never seen again. Holt died at 59 years old. 2 years later, the Harold Holt Memorial Swimming Centre was opened in his honour, a thing that we all like to make jokes of, but to be fair, what other better tribute can you have? A place where people learn how to not drown. A thing that he desperately needed in his life. As the body was never found, unless you believe the whole communist Chinese submarine conspiracy theory, there isn't a specific grave for Holt. There are a few monuments to him. There's one that overlooks Cheviot Beach with a bit of biographical detail, but he also has a symbolic grave in Melbourne General Cemetery, erected in 1997. That's the one that I want to talk about. It's a nice simple kind of flattish pyramid with a ball on top of it. The text is minimal, it's got his name, his wife Zara's name, and then a quote on it that sums him up as a person. It is perfect. It's 4 simple words and it reads, "He loved the sea." Perfect. I love it. No notes. Chef's kiss. What else could you possibly say? 10 out of 10 to whoever went, yes, we're putting that on Harold Holt's grave. He loved the sea. And there you have it. Thank you for tuning in. Comment down below your favourite grave. Just any grave. Which one do you like the most? Don't forget to share, subscribe, leave me a little like, etc. You know, the algorithm stuff. Also, a big thank you to my sponsors. You may have noticed that I don't take sponsorships from companies. I just don't. I do, however, take monetary support from people on Patreon, so a big thank you to those who contribute to my Patreon. You can find a link in the description as well as social media links as well. I have Blue Sky. I don't think I've ever promoted that, but I have that as well, and Instagram. Like, follow me elsewhere, I guess. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you next time.